The War is Over, the Stonehouse Series, Chapter 38. Emil and the servants assisting him had taken them both and tied their legs securely in a spread-eagle manner with 4 cross poles. They would not be allowed to move or flop around. A much larger, long wooden pole, almost 4-arm lengths long, was then threaded between the cross poles and their body. Both sets were then securely fastened to the bigger pole. 2 holes were dug about hip deep, one about 2 feet in from each end of the big pole. A large forked branch was solidly set in each hole with dirt packed in around its base. Next, a large pole with both creatures fastened to it was hoisted up and set on top of the forked branches. Emil had taken part in or had overseen every aspect of the preparation. They had one chance to get this right. This ought to work. Mary's gonna love this, Martha too. I hope Jesus approves, and I think that it's okay, I hope. Finally, both of them were slowly turned by servants for a few hours over a large bed of coals, as another servant brushed them with a rich mixture of herbs and spices. When they were both barbecued to perfection, the rams were brought into the feast. Mary, Ben, and Simon's servant arrived back at Stonehouse shortly after the first ram had been carved up and served. Although the house was full of people, Mary knew she would not escape Martha's "What do you think you're doing?" look. Mary went to find her sister first. She was with Hannah in the kitchen. Martha called out to her the instant she came around the corner. "Mary, what were you thinking? Did anything happen? It's not safe to be out there. You heard what Ben and Emil said. The things they heard. It's just not safe, Mary." "You're right, Martha, but I am okay, and I will tell you all about it later. It was something I needed to do." Mary hesitated, evaluating, considering what she desired to tell her sister. "He was there, Martha, the one Jesus talked about." "Tell me straight, Mary, who was there?" "Spirit helper, he was there." Martha was measuring her sister. Overwhelmingly contented joy was oozing from her, and she pushed to see if it was real. "And you know this? How do you know this?" "Peace in the middle of a storm. I was in a glory bubble when he was there, and I could do whatever it was I needed to do, and he got me ready ahead of time." "And you sure it was him? No doubts?" Although both were close as equals, Martha pressed herself to appear intimidating towards her younger sibling, elbows pointing out, both hands anchored to her hips, somehow almost towering over Mary. "Yes, Martha, I believe that he led me there in the first place, although I'm not quite sure I did that part completely right." "And the there that he led you, where was that?" "To get a bottle of spikenard oil from our stash at the greenhouse." "That oil is your brother's also." Gazing up into her sister's eyes, Mary saw concern for her, not the price of spikenard oil. "Yes, I understand. Could you find him? And Simon too? What I believe I am to do, it will involve him also." "Now?" Martha tried to read her sister, to get inside her head, but she couldn't tell where she was going. "I trust you, Mary. I hope to say the same an hour from now." "Yes, right now." "Okay, Mary, I will get them and be right back." There were conversations interrupted, but Martha returned shortly with Simon and Lazarus. Ben saw them leave, circle around, and met them in the kitchen. Mary looked into the face of her brother and expounded, "Lazarus, when your body died, it seemed all hope was gone, but Jesus sent us something. With his words, he built for us a place to stand. He planted life seeds in our hearts. Martha gardened and allowed those seeds to grow, and so did Ben, Emil, John, and Simon too." Mary spoke directly to her sister. "But to the others also, Jesus was able to reach in through you and pull Lazarus back to us. I could have stood there with you, but I did not." Mary spoke matter-of-factly, face to face. There was no shifting eyes or shuffling feet or staring at the ground. Simon asked Mary, "What is Spirit Helper leading you to do? Whatever it is, we will stand with you." "Jesus has spoken of his death and his resurrection. You, Lazarus, you have told us some of what he will have to face during his dying time, things David and the others wrote about. What I am to do is to present a picture against death and for life. What I am to do is to anoint his head with this oil, and then his feet, and to wipe his feet with my hair. Now, knowing what I am to do, can you stand with me?" That paints a very potent picture of death, burial, and resurrection, and I'm sure Jesus will see it clearly. But Mary, when Spirit Helper leads you somewhere, you go there, even if you go alone. Simon and Lazarus went back to their guests, and Benjamin joined them. Martha brought another food platter out from the kitchen. Watching silently for a few moments, peeking out around the corner of the crowd of people, Mary quietly asked, "Spirit Helper, when am I to do this?" At that moment, Esther came and stood beside her, and placing her right hand on Mary's right shoulder, she whispered in her ear, "Just paint for him a picture which is intensely understood by both of you. What others think is not important." Mary whispered, "But there are so many people." "Don't let your emotions run away with you. You steer them with your spoken thoughts and use your emotion for what they are for. You are only the delivery girl, delivering a message to one man. Jesus is the only one in the room. It is just like what Benjamin did at the Jordan. You have authority because you are under authority. Follow the lead of Spirit Helper. Open your mouth and he will fill it." Once again, she slipped inside a glory bubble, and thoughts entered Spirit Mary, which she then sent to her mind. She first heard, "Remember the words King David wrote." Next, words she had studied, and the understanding of them flowed into her mind, and with the knowing surfaced emotions, which accompanied the understanding, and tears were sliding down her face. Turning to her friend, Mary said, "Thank you," and she stepped out through the crowd, walking directly up to Jesus. Breaking the bottle seal, Mary opened it, and its fragrance escaped into the room. Tentatively, at first, she poured some of the spikenard oil over the head of her Lord, and as she did so, words rose from her heart, which left her mouth as a whisper, but they were words Jesus clearly heard. "Who hath believed our report, and to whom is the arm of the Lord revealed?" As Mary's fingers worked the oil through Jesus' head of hair, she continually spoke in clear and level tones. From her spirit self, words Spirit Helper brought to her remembrance. Surely he hath bore our grief and carried our sorrows. And on she went, somewhat surprised. The words of Isaiah flowed from her mouth as smooth as the oil on her fingers. For the transgression of my people was he stricken. They parted my garments among them and cast lots upon my vesture. As more oil was added, so were segments of the Psalms of David. For though thou wilt not leave my soul in hell, neither wilt thou allow thy Holy One to see corruption. In the midst of the great congregation, I will praise thee. As Martha watched her sister, the odor from the oil brought before her eyes a memory of her brother shuffling his way out of the tomb. When they were at the grave of Lazarus, she stood there with and next to Jesus. She had filled her lungs and heart with that beautiful aroma of life. Tears of joy were streaming down her face. She knew that her Lord would rise again, defeating death, hell, and the grave, alive forevermore, purchasing salvation from his Father for whoever will receive, just as he said he would. Mary continued, "In thy presence is fullness of joy." Except for the sound of Mary's voice to the ears of Jesus, the room, to her Lord, was absolutely silent. "Thou art my son, this day I have begotten thee. Ask of me, and I will give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, and the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession." From his head she went to his feet and poured the remainder of the flask upon them, saying, "Thou hast ascended on high, thou hast led captivity captive, thou hast received gifts in the man." Then Mary began to wipe the feet of Jesus with her own hair, giving voice to the words, "How beautiful upon the mountain are the feet of him! All the ends of the earth shall see the salvation of our God." Then, finally, Mary rose up, gazing into the eyes of Jesus, and she added, "I will uphold those who uphold you, and favor those who favor your righteous cause." Searching her heart, Mary concluded that she had completed what was requested of her, and she left the room. Esther followed her around the corner and down the steps and into the wine cellar, watching her walk into the closet at the end of the room. Esther waited to close the back door of the closet until she could see light coming up from the caves below. Mary took the candle and the holder in her hand and found Anna's old room. She set the candle on Anna's nightstand and laid upon the bed, pulled up a blanket, curled up into a ball, and fell asleep. Esther returned to the big room as Jesus was giving one of his disciples a royal dressing down. It was directed at the one she never cared for, Judas. "Poverty will always be with you, but you will not always be with me." Now is when silence settled on the room and the house. The only sound in play was Jesus' voice. "What she has done against the day of my death. But wherever the good news is preached, this will also be spoken of as a memorial to her." At that moment, Judas stood to his feet and left the dinner. Some watched him from the windows, walking down a wide path, departing to his future.